Hi folks, with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of what's generically termed as a, a threat to democracy. A threat to democracy. Democracy is under threat. Democracy is in danger. The globalist controlled and paid up and talking heads, they're on the globalist payroll here, are going around the world, whether it's in the United Kingdom or Australia, the United States, Canada, it doesn't matter. They're going around pushing the same talking points. And they're wanting, to some degree, even being moderately successful, they want to reframe what a threat to democracy actually is. So they want to define it in terms that suit their talking points. So now most of us, I think any reasonable person would say, well, rigging elections, that's a threat to democracy because elections reflect the will of the people. If you rig the election, then you're subverting the will of the people, which is the very essence of the democratic vote. Now, we can get into the semantics saying America's a republic, but that's the point is that the public vote for their government, whether it's a republic or whatever you want to call it, but it's where the voting public vote for their government. And if you rig an election, then you're subverting the will of the people. Thus, you're subverting democracy. Now, that's not a difficult concept to grasp. So what are these talking heads, the globalist paid up talking heads that are trying to reframe what a threat to democracy is? Surely rigging an election is a threat to democracy. No, that's not a threat. Rigging elections, no, that's not a threat. Because if we rig elections, it's only because we're trying to stop Hitler. So we're allowed to do it. What if the other side rigs an election? No, it's us. Only we can do it, not them. Okay, fine. All right then. Well, let's go on to the next thing. What about trying to put your political opponents in prison based on bullshit made up charges? Surely that's a threat to democracy, putting your political opponent. I mean, the people have a right to choose who they want to govern them. And if you're going to throw the political opposition candidates in prison, then surely that's a threat to democracy. No, it's not. Because when we do it, it's good because we're only trying to stop fucking Hitler and the Nazis and the fascists and the swastikas. So when we do it, it's good. But what if the other side does it? No, they're not allowed to do it. If they do it, it's because they're Hitler. Well, doesn't that make you Hitler if you're doing no, we're the good guys. It's okay when we do it. Okay, so rigging elections is not a threat to democracy. Throwing your political opponents in prison or trying to, that's not a threat to democracy. Or well, what about willfully and purposefully and aggressively appointing activist judges that are anti the Constitution, anti the Constitution? They're against the Constitution. They're against the rule of law and due legal process. Isn't that bad? No. It's bad when they do it. If they put a constitutional judge in office, then that's bad. But if we do it, appoint an anti-constitutional, anti-constitutional judge, then we're doing good because they're Hitler and we're not. Don't you get it? Oh, right, okay. So really, you can look at any aspect of subverting democracy, and the will of the people. Then they don't see that. So what do they see as democracy? Well, they effectively have redefined democracy not to be the will of the people, but the equal outcomes and the participation of the people. So why don't we get 16-year-olds to vote and every black lesbian should vote and all this sort of thing? But it's not the issue of democracy, the will of the people. An informed electorate selecting and electing their governments and those who will govern them. That's out the window. There's not. I don't think there's a single candidate standing in office, or a handful maybe, whether in any of the Western democracies, that is actually chosen by the people at grassroots level. Pretty much every candidate for election is selected by a central party machine, political party machine, which is they're only pro-globalist people are being selected, or those too stupid to know what day it is anyway. But that's the selection process. So it's only the small and minor and independent parties that have got a very, very minimal chance of ever seeing government or being part of any government. It's only them where there is actually grassroots selection. So that's a subversion of democracy in itself, that the party machinery, political party machinery, whether it's Democrat or Republican, is largely or totally controlled by the globalist cabal. That's a subversion of democracy, and a very severe one at that. But they don't see it that way, nor do they really care. The issue for the globalists is to grab all the tax money in the Western world and launder it into their pockets, and in order to pave the way and set the pathway up for their eternal control of the situation, of the body politic, of the government, of the public service, of the judiciary, and so on. If you're going to willfully appoint activists, anti-constitutional, anti-activists, anti-law activists into the judiciary, then that is a subversion of democracy, given the very pivotal role that the role of law and due legal process, habeas corpus, that sort of thing, play in a democracy. It plays an important role. No one envisaged a situation where that would be suspended through the internal sabotage, which is what it is. I mean, just looking at I'll go through a few examples here, but just in January, the January 6th thing, people that have committed no crime, be it misdemeanor level or not, were being arbitrarily arrested and detained. Habeas corpus be damned. There were activist judges that were, putting people in prison on, the most tenuous sort of arguments and spurious charges. People were being put in solitary confinement. Pretty much every constitutional protection that a citizen has was being disregarded in pursuit of these January 6th people who had committed no crime in the first place. The very crime they're supposed to have committed was invented. Now, if that's not a brazen, callous and brazen undermining of democracy and part of the processes that underpin democracy, I don't know what it is. And yet that was not only accepted, the media ran cover for it, and the entire body politic was running with it. There were very few voices talking out against it, and it was allowed to happen. Then you said, well, that couldn't happen in a place like America, Bill of Rights and Constitution and this and that, but it did happen. Now the same goes in, say, places like Britain, where if somebody put up posters saying it's okay to be white in Britain, and they got 2 years in prison for that. Seriously, a poster saying it's okay to be white. Now, if black and brown people riot and call out Allahu Akbar, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong there. But for white persons, straight white Christian males, it's okay to be white, and they go to prison. Are you kidding? So the people in England, or there are people in England that are getting put in prison for simply having the wrong opinions, and if they make the mistake of stating that on social media, then they can have a large contingent of police knocking at their door, police that will be driving past all sorts of robberies and rapes and somebody making an online social media post that you could hardly call inflammatory, ill-advised perhaps, but not inflammatory, and they get put into prison for it. This is the state we're in the Western world now. So it's a complete breakdown of not democracy itself, and there's definitely that, but what underpins it. Now, if you take away what underpins the democratic vote, then you automatically create the conditions for a collapse in democracy overall. And this is what's happening. If the public service is no longer neutral, which is just meant to serve the people, the will of the people, as expressed through the election of the parliamentarians or the congressmen. If the public servants are no longer neutral and they're controlled by globalist activist cabals, and they perceive themselves as the resistance against Nazis or something like that, some other invented figment of their fevered imaginations, then those are factors underpinning. So the independence of the judiciary upholding the rule of law, particularly due legal process, if that's gone and the public service is no longer neutral, all you need to do is throw in the rigging of elections and that's it. Democracy's ceased to exist, which it did temporarily in the United States. The idea that a doddery old man who could barely string a sentence together could record the highest number of votes in American presidential election history, of course, is beyond absurd, transcends the realms of the greatest absurdities. And that gives you, I think that in itself, that just fully encapsulates the extent to which and the lengths they're prepared to go to rig the elections. Look at in Britain, where they want to give 16-year-olds the vote, which has always been a big, get a hard on for the leftists and so on. The idea that all these 16-year-old kids are going to vote for the globalist candidates or vote against they'll vote against the Nazis. Then that in itself is a subversion, a willful and premeditated subversion of the democratic process. So let's just sort of have a look at this. Now, there's people I know, including judges and public servants, senior ones at that, getting paid their $500,000 plus a year. And they don't seem to think that rigging an election is a subversion of democracy. They don't believe that activist judges, they don't believe that ignoring due legal process and the rule of law, none of these things. Trump, they say, is the biggest threat to democracy. Well, how is he a threat to democracy? I get that. He's been duly elected by the people of the United States. He's the duly elected president. Even though I still think they cooked up several million votes for Kamala, they just didn't cook up enough votes to get her across the line. But so how is Trump a threat to democracy? He's got to go through the courts. Activist judges are blocking him at every turn. Isn't that democracy in action, or is that just activist judges trying to subvert democracy? Which is it? He's got to work through Congress. The Republicans have a very slim majority in the House of Representatives, and they've got a decent workable majority in the Senate. But 2 or 3 of the senators in the Senate, Republican senators, are more than happy to jump and join the other side, believe it or not. So exactly how is Trump a threat to democracy? Well, it's because because he's deporting illegal aliens, but illegal aliens. How is that a threat to them? Well, it's because they can't answer it. He wants to deny birthright citizenship of illegal aliens. Well, that's a threat. How is that a threat to democracy? They're illegal. But they only want a better life. It's democratic to let them stay. Well, how's it democratic if they're illegal? Well, it's just because you must be Hitler if you're asking that question. No. Why is Trump a threat to democracy? Oh, if you love Hitler so much, why don't you? No. Answer the question. How is Trump a threat to democracy? Oh, I don't have to answer your question. Yeah. So they've got no idea, but this talking point comes up. Now, there's a couple of things where they're kind of getting a bit of traction, and I'm not that comfortable about it, where Trump's getting everything done through executive orders. If he was having to get things through the Congress, everything he wanted to do, he'd need a 5 million year term as president. He's just not going to get it. The globalists control just nearly all of most of Congress. He'd be lucky to be 100 people in Congress that would even be somewhat independent of the globalists. So Trump's got no choice. If he's going to get anything done, it has to be through executive order. But the entire public service, a great chunk of the judiciary, and much of the Congress is opposing him, not because of anything other than the media opposing him, just because they represent globalist interests, not because they agree or disagree with the policies necessarily. It's simply that Trump is not a globalist stooge. He's not the globalists' man. So they just want to oppose everything he does and denounce it as being, it's the work of Hitler, swastika, Nazis, fascists. When it's nothing of the sort. Of course, he's going through the very properly appointed and codified democratic processes and using fully within the realms of the stated scope of the office of the president. So he's getting that. Now I'm a little bit, I don't kind of like this so much, that the executive orders, but I realise equally that Trump's got really no other options to get things done. He's got to do it. But without it being codified into law or being a policy adopted by the Congress, and they may catch up over the next few years, although I doubt it. What that means is that when a Democrat, led president and Congress, whatever comes in, they can simply undo it by executive order, and it's created a precedent where instead of working through a Congress that accepts the authority of the president, that everything now, or not everything, but many things can be simply determined by presidential executive order, which again is part of the democratic process, but it means it can be undone just as easily as it can be done. And that's I think very concerning. Is that a threat to democracy? Well, no, but the back and forth, if Democrats and Republicans alternate, assuming they do have different policies, the idea that someone like Trump could come along without the globalists anointing and appointing and controlling them was not foreseen by the globalists. They perceived they had enough control of the media narrative and the body politic and the party machine. They thought they had enough control to stop anyone like Trump coming along. And so they didn't anticipate this, which is why they went crazy trying to invent bullshit charges against him and throw him in prison. I mean, that was insane. If people think that, again, talking to a judge here, the judge doesn't seem to think that was a problem, trying to put Trump in. If he's guilty, well, why not? Why should he be above the law? Or I think, why doesn't Biden go in prison for his corruption with Burisma and everything in Ukraine? Oh, well, that's different. No, he shouldn't have gone. So you can see here that's a politically partisan thing, that there's so many people now in the globalist sympathetic camp that they perceive, Trump's mere existence is an affront to their sensitivities. But we need, I think, to accept that the media and the globalist cabal have redefined what democracy now means. Black lesbians have an equal outcome with everyone else. Democracy means that straight white Christian males don't get any jobs. Or so, it means that straight white Christian males get thrown into prison for any reason, and it means these sort of things. That's democratic. That means democracy is working. It's staggering that they've been able to successfully redefine it. But that's where we are, and hopefully the presidency, the presidency of President Trump will go some way to repairing that terrible damage that's been done to democracy and the democratic process. You've been with Tacitus today, and thank you for listening.